All right, so this Knife Thoughts video is going to be on this knife, and this is the TK Pro Barracuda with the Wharncliffe style blade. And of course, if you enjoy videos on knives like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel, click the bell and select all so you know when I post new videos. Check out my other social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Knife Thoughts, and my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife related topics. But getting into the knife here, this TK Pro Barracuda is a knife that hadn't really been on my radar. So TK Pro, or Tack Knives, reached out to me and asked if I was interested in checking out some of their out the front knives. And like I say, I hadn't heard of the brand before, so I was a little skeptical at first, but they told me that Bestech Knives is who makes these TK Pro, the upper or mid-range actually at this point, which I'll talk more about, line of knives from Tack Knives. And so I was really interested because Bestech Knives makes a great knife. They are an OEM for other brands, and they make their own knives, which are really nice knives. So I didn't realize that they made out the front knives, and I was very interested in that. So they sent a few knives. They sent this, the Barracuda. They also sent a medium-sized knife, the Hornet, and a smaller knife, the Mini Firecracker. But this is the size OTF that I'm really, most comfortable with, that I carry the most. So this is the one that I really wanted to show you in comparison to some other out-the-front knife options. And I did do an unboxing video on these knives, so you can check that out. And in that video, I was really kind of blown away at how good the action and lockup are on these. So I'm gonna go right into talking about that. And this might, I don't know, upset some people, but the action and lockup on these TK Pro knives, and particularly on this Barracuda, is really incredible. You can see and hear that this just fires out. The actual actuation of the button is very smooth. There's no hard kind of stop, or what you might call like a trigger break if it was a gun. It just gets a little bit more difficult, but then you can go right into opening and closing it. And again, you can see how nicely that fires in and out very quick. But not only does it fire in and out very quickly, has a nice sound, it is incredibly solid. So I am wiggling this as hard as I can, and you can hear how very little wobble there is. There is wobble, but very, very little. So if there wasn't any wobble in this, it would really shake up the industry, the market, because the only really out the front knife that doesn't have any blade plate, and I've never even seen one in person, is the Hawk Deadlock. And it's a very, very expensive knife. So, even really expensive USA made out the front knives have some blade wobble, but this has very, very little, really, really very little blade wobble. And I'm going to give you some comparisons that, again, some people who really like these other knives may not like. Now, I really like these other knives too. I'm not saying that they're bad knives or that they're not a good value or anything like that. There is value in the fact that these other knives are made in the USA, whereas this is made in China. But these knives are all more expensive. So here is one that I really like. This is the Axial Shift, a USA made knife, about $250, maybe a little bit more now. This is the first version, and you can hear there's a good bit more than the TK Pro. Here is the second version, the newer version of the Axial Shift. A little bit more strong action and a little bit less play. But you can still see and hear that it is definitely more than the Barracuda. So, and I'm just going to be honest, be fair. I really like these Axial knives. I'm looking forward to, getting more of them when they come out with new models, but there is no question that this Barracuda has less play. Now, here's the one that, I might have some people that are upset with me about. here's a Microtech Ultratech. This is from when they didn't have Blade Show in 2020. Good action, no complaints on the action here. Sounds good, feels good, real smooth also, but for sure has more blade wobble than the Barracuda. And I mean, it's really, you know, it's noticeable. I think anyone, it's not like I'm looking for it, you know, it's not like I'm kind of imagining it or looking to have that result. It just is what it is. That is the result. Of these three knives, the Barracuda has for sure the least play. I'm gonna show that again. There is the Barracuda. There is the shift, Barracuda again, so that you don't forget. And here is the Ultratech. So really it goes from bottom being the most play to top being the least play. And this is a sample size of 1 on the Barracuda and on the Ultratech. I don't have any other Microtechs. I have had other Microtechs. I don't remember them being as, you know, tight as the Barracuda. And, you know, I have this version of the shift and the earlier version, both of which have similar, you know, I think this one has a little bit less play. But I do have 3 different TK Pro knives. And while the Barracuda, I think, is the most solid, I think that all 3 of them give these other, you know, these American-made knives a run for their money. And speaking of money, this is a much less expensive knife. So like I mentioned, you know, the Ultratech, if you get it new, it's probably going to be at least $290. I think more likely 300 plus. The shift, and both of these have, you know, availability issues somewhat, but the shift, I think these are about 250 still, 270, something like that. This is a much bigger out the front, but this is the HK made by Hogue Incursion. Same deal, has more play. This one actually is really solid also. It has very, very little side to side, but more forward and back than the Barracuda. But it also, you know, it's a much bigger knife, but it is, you know, like $270, something like that, $260. The Barracuda is $170. So you're looking at least $100 basically less. And of course, you know, I think a lot of people really put a lot of value on a knife being made in the USA, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I appreciate knives being made in the USA, and I appreciate that as part of the value of these other knives that I'm showing. So I really am not downplaying, you know, the worth of these other knives. But I'm just pointing out that if you want a really well-made knife and you're not, you know, it's not a sticking point for you whether or not it's made in the USA, you can get a very, very well-made out the front automatic knife from TK Pro for a good bit less money than, you know, one of the American brands. Now, there are, you know, several different designs that they have, and within this Barracuda, there are a couple different blade shapes. You have this Wharncliffe with the black wash, which I think looks really good. This is a very kind of blacked out looking knife. Now, with the black blade, I would have loved to have seen a black switch and black clip. I think that, you know, it would just make it so, and also black screws. I think if you took this knife with the black blade and the black handle and made everything black, it would give it a really, really sleek look, especially with this carbon fiber inlay. You can see that the carbon fiber inlay is done well, but I do think that everything being black would give this a really nice look. But there are also, you know, not black washed versions of the Wharncliffe. There's a double-edged, you know, option. So there's different versions that you can look at. And speaking of the price, you can use the code KNIFETHOUGHTS for a discount. So make sure you do that. It will get you a discount, an extra discount on top of the, you know, good price there. And also will let them know that you watched the video. So make sure you use code KNIFETHOUGHTS. But I think that this is a really nice knife. I'll tell you what, I have carried and used this knife a good bit, and it feels great in the hand. I think this is a really nice size, like I said. It is very similar in size to the Shift and the Ultratech. Now, again, in kind of order here from smallest to biggest. The Barracuda is the shortest and really the thinnest also. The Ultratech might be a little bit thinner at points, but overall I think that the Barracuda feels the smallest. Then the Ultratech, and then the Shift. All of these are a good size for me. I think that they're all kind of pretty similar in their size. So if you like more of a full size but not massive, like the HK Incursion or a Microtech Combat Trudon or Troodon, however you say it, then I think that this is a good size for that. It feels good in the hand. I can get a full 4-finger grip on this knife really easily, 2 fingers up in this area and then 2 fingers down in this area. You do have kind of an integrated lanyard hole. I probably wouldn't use that myself, but it is nicely faceted, so you know it feels fine in the hand. If you're thinking of this as a tactical knife, you could probably hit things with that, but you know, not really what I'm carrying it for. But it feels great in the hand. This, you know, Wharncliffe blade is a cool looking blade. It looks unique enough, I think. I think there are other kind of similar blades in the out the front market, but I don't think that this is similar enough to other Wharncliffe or whatever you want to call it, reverse Tonto, modified Wharncliffe, whatever you want to call it. I don't think it's similar enough for it to, you know, be suspect. I think that it is its own blade shape, and it cuts pretty well. Now, out the front knives just don't tend to be the thinnest knives. They don't tend to be the sliciest knives because they have relatively short, as in this, you know, direction, not tall blades. So you know, you can't have as much of a grind. Now, this knife has a relatively short saber grind to it. So, you know, it doesn't go very far up the blade. I'll show you a comparison to a similar blade shape, not the same, but similar. You can see that the Shift, the grind goes a little farther up the blade, but the blade on the Barracuda is thinner. Similar grind height on the Ultratech, but it is a double-edged blade. So it's not the thinnest knife out there. It's not the most slicey knife, but it's going to work well for your normal cutting. I use this for just like daily tasks, opening boxes and things like that, and it worked fine. It comes to a relatively good thinness, but again, it's going to thicken pretty quickly because it's not a super tall grind. But it works perfectly fine, and I think for an EDC knife, this Wharncliffe is a good option because you can do pull cuts really well with this. So things like breaking down cardboard, opening boxes, cutting tape, things like that. Now, this is D2 steel. So a lot of people kind of poo-poo D2 steel. I like it. I've used D2 steel a lot. For my uses, it is certainly sufficient. I really have no problem with D2 steel. A lot of people, like I say, do, kind of, but for me, it's a fine steel. Some of their other knives are in other steels, like 154 CM, so just, you know, check out the specs, make sure you know what steel you're getting and that you're cool with it. I personally am fine with D2 steel. It holds an edge well. I'm familiar with it because I've sharpened it a lot, but like I say, not a super steel, but also, again, you know, this knife is $100 less than, you know, these other knives that have steels like M390. Is this M390? Where does it even say? I don't know. I think this is M390. Oh no, it's 204P and something like 20 CV, you know. So not a super steel, but certainly a fine steel in my opinion. And I think overall it's just a really good knife. Really, really well made. Beautiful, beautiful action. Super solid lockup, comfortable handle, very usable blade, and you know, you can get it at a much less expensive price than a similar quality USA made out the front automatic. So I have really enjoyed getting to check out this TK Pro Barracuda. Make sure if you get one for yourself, you use that code Knife Thoughts, get yourself a little discount. Thank you again to Tack Knives TK Pro for sending this. And I wanted to mention that this is part of their kind of medium range, so $160, $170. But they are planning to come out with a new brand, a new line of knives that they're going to call TackCom, and they will also be made by Bestech, but they will be even kind of higher quality. So I'm really looking forward to that because this is a really nice knife. So I'm really interested to see what they do to make them higher quality. And I would imagine it would be things like having, a higher end blade steel, things like that. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Make sure you keep an eye out. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this knife. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.